Hey guys, today we're going to be talking about adding and subtracting fractions, specifically positive and negative fractions. So just a little bit review. If we're given mixed numbers, we have to change those mixed numbers to improper fractions before we add or subtract. So remember, if you have a whole number out front, that needs to be changed to the improper fraction using the boomerang method. It's just easier when we're working with negatives. The next part, we need to find a common denominator. Okay, after we find a common denominator, then we're going to add or subtract the numerator, so that's that top number, and you're going to follow the rules of integers. So think about what we know about adding and subtracting positive and negative numbers, and you're going to follow those same rules. And then the last part, you're just going to keep the denominator the same. So once you change it, once you change it to get that common denominator, you are going to then keep it the same throughout the entire problem, unless you were reducing it at the very end. Okay, so let's take a look at the first part. So we have -3/4 plus positive 1 1/2. So let's rewrite everything out, but remember we're going to have to take that mixed number and change it to an improper fraction. But -3/4 will stay the same. And then plus 1 1/2. So if I'm looking at 1 1/2, remember the boomerang method, so you're going to take 2 and multiply by the number out front. So 2 times 1 is 2. Then you're going to add the numerator plus 1. So 2 plus 1 is 3. And then you're going to keep the denominator the same, that 2. So we have -3/4 plus 3/2. Now, we need to make sure that we get a common denominator. So the easiest way to do this would be to get a common denominator of 4. So my -3/4, I don't even have to change. But this 3/2, I need to convert it so that it has a common denominator of 4. So I am going to then, I know that to get from a 2 to a 4, I need to multiply by 2. So I'm going to multiply by 2 in the numerator and the denominator. So 3 times 2 is 6. And 2 times 2 is 4. So now I have a common denominator. And we can go ahead and do our addition. So when we're adding, remember we're just going to keep the denominators the same. So whatever our final answer is going to be over 4. And then we're going to add the numerator. So we have -3 plus 6. So -3 plus 6 would just give me positive 3/4. And that would be my answer. Okay, so we converted it to an improper fraction, got a common denominator, added using our integer rules, and then kept the denominator the same at the end. All right, so let's take a look at the next one. So we have 2 5/8 minus -2/5. So once again, first things first, we need to take this and we need to rewrite it as an improper fraction. So I'm going to do that boomerang method. 8 times 2 is 16. 16 plus 5 is 21, and I'm going to keep that over 8 because my denominator stays the same. And then I'm going to subtract -2/5. Okay, so our next step, just like before, we're going to take that denominator, we're going to convert it to a common denominator. So the easiest way in this case would just be to multiply those two together. So I need to get a denominator of 40 because 8 times 5 is 40. So when I do this, I'm going to multiply by 5 over 5 in the first fraction. So 21 times 5 would give me 105. 8 times 5 obviously would give me 40. Okay, and then my second fraction, I'm going to do 2 times 8 because remember I have to do what I'm doing to get 40 in this fraction. So I'm going to do 5 times 8 and that gives me 40, but 2 times 8 gives me 16. So I have -16 up top and then -16 over 40. Okay, so next step then would be to do our integer rule. So I know my answer is going to have a denominator of 40, and in the numerator I have 105 minus negative 16. Okay, so I'm going to do my add a line and change the sign, right? So I get 105 plus positive 16. And when I do that, I will get 121 over 40. Okay, now we can take this and we can convert it back to a mixed number. And if we do that, you're going to divide the numerator by the denominator using long division. And so for sake of time, I'm just going to do it for you. 3 1/40 would be our answer. But once again, set it up as long division, and that way you can see exactly how many times 121 goes into 40, and then what your remainder would be. Okay. Next one. So letter C, negative 3 1/2 minus 4/7. So first things first, we're going to change this to an improper fraction. So boomerang, 2 times negative 3 is negative 6 plus 1. We're going to get negative 7 over 2. And I'm fully aware that negative 6 plus 1 is really negative 5, but when we're changing it to a mixed number, we need to make sure that that negative is added on at the very end. So I should have done just 2 times 3, which is 6, plus 1, which is 7. So negative 7/2 would be your improper fraction here. And then we're going to subtract 4/7. Okay, and now from here we're going to get a common denominator. So once again, just like in the problem before, we're just going to multiply those two together to get our common denominator of 14. So for that first fraction, I would need to multiply the numerator and the denominator by 7. So negative 7 times positive 7 gives me negative 49. Okay, and then we have, in this fraction, we're going to want to multiply by 2. So we're going to do 4 times 2, which is 8, and then 7 times 2, which is 14. So now we have our two fractions with common denominators. My next fraction is going to have a fraction or a denominator of 14, and I'm going to do my operation up top. So negative 49 plus negative 8. Okay, so remember when we're subtracting a positive 8, we can add a line and change the sign so we get negative 49 plus negative 8. And when we do that, we would get negative 57. Okay, so negative 57 over 14. So that's my improper fraction. If I change that back into a mixed number, my mixed number would be negative 4 1/4. So this is your answer, and this is your answer. And I didn't circle my answer up here. Sorry. Okay, so now let's take a look at letter D. All right, so we have 2/3 minus 9/10. We don't have any improper fractions here, so we can just kind of roll with it. So our first step is going to just be to get that common denominator. So we're going to multiply those two together. So if we are looking at this, we know we're going to want a denominator of 30. So to get from 3 to 30, I'm multiplying by 10. So I'm going to do 2 times 10, which is 20, and then 3 times 10, which is 30. And I'm going to subtract. In the second fraction, I'm doing 10 times 3, which gives me 30 in the denominator, and then 9 times 3, which gives me 27. Okay, so next step, our denominator is going to remain 30 throughout the whole problem. We're going to do our integer operations, so 20 plus negative 27. Because once again, add a line and change the sign. So 20 minus 27 is the same thing as 20 plus negative 27. And we're going to get negative 7 over 30 as my answer. Okay, last one. So we have 5/6 minus 3 1/2. So I don't need to change my first fraction yet, but I do need to convert this next fraction, this mixed number, to an improper fraction. So when I do that, I'm going to do 12 times 3, which gives me 36, plus 1 is 37. So I have 37 over 12. Okay, so now I'm going to convert this to an improper to a common denominator, sorry, because we already did an improper fraction. So what can I do to get this to a denominator of 12? I would multiply the first fraction by 2 in the numerator and the denominator. So I have 10 over 12, because 5 times 2 is 10, 6 times 2 is 12. And then I have plus 37 over 12. Oh, sorry, minus. My bad. So we're subtracting 37 over 12. And then now we can do everything together. So I know my denominator is going to be 12. And if I do 10 minus 37, I can rewrite that as addition using 10 plus negative 37, because we add a line and change the sign, right? Same thing. Okay, so after I do that, 10 plus negative 37 gives me negative 27 in the numerator and 12 in the denominator. So from there, I can change it to a mixed number. And so my mixed number would be, it would reduce down from negative 2 and 3/12 to eventually negative 2 and 1/4. So this is my answer right here. Okay, all right. Make sure that you complete the questions attached. If you have any questions about this concept, please type it into the very end of this video in that last question. All right, we will see you all tomorrow. Thanks.